So hi to everyone and good evening. And for those of you who don't know me already, my name is Rahini Bajekal and I'm a nutritionist and board member at Plant-Based Health Professionals UK, which is a community interest group dedicated to promoting the benefits of a sustainable whole foods plant-based way of eating. Tonight we have Dr. Dean and Ayesha Sherzai, who really need no introduction as we're all huge fans of their work. They're brilliant neurologists, doctors, researchers, scientists, and they're going to be discussing a topic that is incredibly important: how to avoid Alzheimer's and live an unforgettable life. Before we get into that, I want to let you know very exciting news about their new book, which will be released on March the 23rd in the USA and available for pre-order now in the UK, the 30-day Alzheimer's solution, and it will be out in your hands in May in the UK. I've already had a sneak peek of this book and it's absolutely exceptional. Dr. Dean and Dr. Ayesha explain this complex condition in a really clear way, and the recipes are absolutely delicious. So I will pop a link to the pre-order link in the email that I send you after this webinar. These webinars wouldn't be possible without our brilliant sponsors, veganfitness.com, who kindly lend us their Zoom platform, ProVeg International, and of course, this is a CPD accredited webinar with the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine, who have supported our webinars since the very beginning last April. Do stay tuned, because in 2 weeks' time, we're going to have a brilliant dietitian on to discuss food allergies and intolerances in a plant-based diet, where we'll be covering some of the most common allergens that can be found in plant-based diet and tips and tricks to navigate this. This is just one of the brilliant advantages of joining Plant-Based Health Professionals UK as a member. We have fitness classes, cookery socials, a monthly journal club, and this is something that we've got on next week. Even more exciting news for those of you who are a fan of cookery shows, we have Sunny Patel and Dr. Hayley Tate from Plant-Based Health Professionals UK on Ready Steady Cook tomorrow at BBC One in the afternoon, so do tune into that. They'll be cooking up some delicious whole foods plant-based recipes and talking about nutrition. And lastly, membership is open to everyone, not just healthcare professionals, and it's wonderful to see so much support of Plant-Based Health Professionals UK this year. Visit pbhp.uk to subscribe to our free weekly newsletter, where we provide evidence-based information about the whole foods plant-based diet. And if you want to support our work and our advocacy around plant-based diets, do visit pbhp.uk/donate following this webinar. We're also very active on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So now I'd like to welcome Dr. Ayesha and Dr. Dean Sherzai. They're a unique husband and wife duo who are dedicated to educating people on the simple steps to long-term health and wellness. As co-directors of the Alzheimer's Prevention Programme at Loma Linda University Medical Center, as well as through their online writing, videos, books, and podcasts, of which we're all huge fans. And remember, at any point during the webinar, if you've got any questions for Dr. Dean and Dr. Ayesha, please use the Q&A function at the bottom rather than the chat. And then that makes it much easier when we get to the live Q&A. So do stay tuned. After their presentation, we'll be grilling them on all our burning questions. Great. So would you be able to share your slides, Dr. Dean and Dr. Ayesha?
Absolutely. Doing that right now. Hello, everyone. Friends at the UK, good evening. Friends in the rest of the world, wherever you are, thank you so much for having us. It's wonderful to be here. We're very excited to share what both Dean and I are passionate about, which is brain health and prevention. So with that, we're going to start a PowerPoint presentation, and happy to have a conversation as soon as this is done.
Perfect. So again, we're so pleased to be here. This is our passion, our joy to talk about the brain, the organ that makes us who we are. The brain is a 3-pound organ, 2% of your body's weight. It consumes 25% of your energy. It has quadrillion potential connections. That's it. That's where the problem lies. That's where the solution is. This is the century of the brain. What that basically means for us is how we can fully optimize the brain. So although we talk about Alzheimer's, which is the work I've done at NIH, at UCSD, which are the top two places in dementia care, and Ayesha did her work in Columbia University in stroke and preventive medicine and neurology, but it's about brain vitality. And that's not a little catchphrase. It's actually what we are going after, because if we can create environments where you can maintain brain vitality, for the most part, you can avoid strokes and dementias and Alzheimer's in particular. So this amazing brain is the subject matter, and we will show you why in your own life and daily life, without any biohacking or little tricks or vitamins, particular nutrients, but in totality of life, we can achieve profound cognitive capacity. But before that, we'll talk about this tsunami, this behemoth that is dementia. Dementia is an umbrella category. It basically describes a condition where your memory or other cognitive functions have diminished to the point where you can't do some of your daily activities, be it driving, finance, cooking, taking care of your pills. If you can't do any of those, not because of physical limitations, but because of cognitive limitations, it's dementia. So it's a big umbrella category. Within dementia, there are multiple types. The biggest one is Alzheimer's. 60 to 70% of all dementias is constituted by Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a progressive degenerative disease, but now we know that we can do significant work at home and community to forestall or completely eliminate it out of your life. We say as much as 90% can be prevented. This was controversial. Just 3 years ago, when we first wrote the book, 4 years ago, when we wrote the first book, we were invited to UK and we were supposed to go to a BBC London breakfast, which is the largest show in the world. So we were so excited. We were on the train. Halfway there, we got a call from the BBC
Society in UK.
Society, that's saying that, oh, this is too controversial. And our 45-minute talk was reduced to 10 minutes. The only saving grace there was that we met ABBA, which was amazing.
It was amazing.
But beyond that,
took pictures.
Yeah. But now it's actually not controversial. Although we've been saying this for 10 years, now Alzheimer's Association International Conference, all the institutions say that for the most part, for a great number, as much as 60 to 90% can be prevented. Now, in the meantime, nothing much is being done as far as the public health component that needs to be done to make a change. In the meantime, we have 6 million. This number has to be changed every month. When we put this up, a new number goes up. 6 million Americans suffer from this. It's the 64 seconds everybody in the United States, every 64 seconds somebody's being diagnosed. And that's an understatement, because a lot of times people don't get diagnosed. It's the third leading cause of mortality, morbidity in US. It's number one in UK and a lot of European and Western countries, and will be number one in the United States as well. 1 out of 10 individuals over 65 have dementia, and that number doubles until at 85 it's 50%. But I want you to focus not on dementia, on cognitive decline, which starts earlier and in a much bigger population. But we never record that. We never record it because public health doesn't know what to do with it. But this is where we come in, you and us, talking about the kind of implementation that is done at the community level. In fact, our work is in the community. Everything we do, including the book sales, go to our Healthy Minds Initiative, which is a non-for-profit, the purpose of which is to promulgate and spread message about brain health and what communities can do to affect their own brain health. There are disparities in these risks. Women are at twice the risk. Minorities are at twice the risk or more. And most of that has to do with lifestyle and other factors that we'll be talking about. The cost is overwhelming. In the United States, the direct cost of heart disease, the second costliest disease in America, is 120 billion. For Alzheimer's alone, direct cost is 305 billion, indirect cost another 240 billion. That's bewildering. And that number is expected to climb to $1.1 trillion direct cost by 2040, 2050, which would by itself overwhelm the healthcare system as we know it. Same thing in UK and Europe as well. And the numbers are scaring public health advocates. Before we go on, some myths that have to be challenged. One which was controversial, no longer controversial, but that for the majority, you can take it as much as 60% or 90%, Alzheimer's can be prevented. The other myth is that Alzheimer's starts with the first symptoms of memory problems. No, that's why I wanted us to focus on cognitive decline. Cognitive decline and the mechanism of Alzheimer's starts decades earlier. So for those 30-year-olds who think nothing can happen to them, and 40-year-old, this is the time to realize that not only can you abstain or forestall the disease, but you can maintain cognitive vibrancy and vitality and actually grow cognitive capacity. So that's what this talk is about. And the other myth is that there will be one medication that will be a cure for Alzheimer's. It won't. It's a multi-dimensional disease that will not be cured by something that eliminates amyloid, this protein that's been associated. It's more complex than that. And our answer that we've come up with is more complex. The fourth is that it's genetic. And that whenever people say that, they actually mean something else. They mean that nothing can be done because it's genetic. Well, that's not true. Genetics works in a couple of different ways. Yes, there are diseases where the penetrance is 100%. That means that if you have these genes, no matter what you do, you will get the disease at a particular age. Huntington's disease is one such disease. But when it comes to many of the chronic diseases, including Alzheimer's and other dementias, genes play a partial role. They confer risk. It's almost like the saying that goes that it's actually not a good aphorism, but says that genes load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. It's too rapid. I say that genes create the hill, and then lifestyle determines if you're going to fall this side of the hill, which is the bad side, or this side. So it's a slow process of risk building. But in Alzheimer's case, it's not the determinant. It just increases risk. And for decades, we've been chasing these two molecules, amyloid and tau, and throwing drugs at it, antibodies at it, at 100% failure. And about 10 years ago, actually longer than that, the two of us decided to take a path less traveled, went there from towards that path from a fairly good academic backgrounds, Columbia University and Ayesha and others, and we took their path of lifestyle, and what we found was profound. The genetic risks are these. All the genes that you see, except for the three on the left upper corner, which constitutes just 3% of Alzheimer's, the rest are lifestyle genes, meaning that they have to do with things that are affected by lifestyle or affect lifestyle, which means that we can affect them significantly. The 3% on the left upper, yeah, those are the kind of genes that we talked about in Huntington's, that if you have these genes, you're going to get Alzheimer's. But again, that constitutes just 3% of all Alzheimer's. So we've been talking about prevention as the new treatment, and this was controversial, but 2 years ago in Alzheimer's International Conference with 5,000 neurologists in the audience, dementia specialists, the plenary talk was prevention is the new treatment. So we're so glad that everybody else has arrived. But where they haven't arrived at is how and what means. And that's where we come in. The studies that they quote is this study that shows that genetics increase your risk of, if you have the bad genes, increase your risk by 60%. But if you lead a bad lifestyle, poor lifestyle, which we'll describe, on top of the bad genes, your risk goes up 360%. But if you have bad genes and lead an optimal life, and they're optimal by their eyes, you reduce to less than 30%. And we think that their optimal is not truly optimal. So adherence is the new treatment. The reason that we do have degenerative diseases of the brain, or any disease of the brain, there are 4 pathways: inflammation, oxidation, glucose, and lipid dysregulation. And what are those? Those things are the things that we do to our body and brain through nutrition, exercise, stress, and poor sleep, or the other direction, which is good nutrition, lots of exercise, stress management, and restorative sleep. And with that, we've come up with the acronym NEURO, which stands for nutrition, exercise, unwind, which is good stress and bad stress, increase good stress, reduce bad stress, restorative sleep, which is about truly creating an environment where you're going through these deep sleep cycles 4 to 5 times a night, and O, which is optimizing mental activity, which has to do with good stress, which pushes your brain throughout life. That's basically the core of brain health and all health for that matter. So I know that with the acronym we came with this little self-serving neuro, we're neurologists, but I think it helps By the way, within neuro, it's not just nutrition or the general concept of nutrition. Cigarette smoking and alcohol is part of that as well. So with that, I give it to Ayesha to lead.
As far as nutrition goes, I think we have a lot of information about the dietary patterns that lead to poor health, and especially poor brain health. And it's been consistently portrayed in multiple observational studies and also in clinical trials as well. And unfortunately, I'll speak for the United States, most of our diet consists of refined carbohydrates and high sources of saturated fats. And in multiple lines of study, what is consistently coming up over and over again that is that a plant-based, or at least a plant predominant diet, seems to be the best diet for brain health. This is the slide that is produced by the American Heart Association. It's essentially a progress report card of how we're doing as a nation as far as 7 factors of health are concerned. And they're called the simple 7s, and they include smoking, body mass index, physical activity, healthy diet score, total cholesterol, blood pressure, and diabetes. Green means we're doing very well, yellow means we're mediocre, and red means we need a lot of work. And not to go over everything, but I had to put a giant arrow there to show you how poorly we're doing as far as diet is concerned. Less than 0.5% of the population, adult population, are essentially eating a healthy diet, which is defined by the American Heart Association, which we believe that can be optimized even further. So there's a lot of work to be done. To summarize what a brain healthy diet looks like, whether it's the Mediterranean dietary patterns or studies that have come to us from Rush University defining what a MIND diet is. MIND diet is a diet that is an amalgam of the Mediterranean and the DASH diet, which is dietary approach to stop hypertension, a diet that is low in sodium and high in plant foods. It's essentially the plants that stand out. So an unprocessed plant-based diet seems to be on top. And elimination, or at least reduction, of sources of saturated fats are highlighted, which comes from meat, poultry, and dairy. And of course, elimination of refined carbohydrates, which are the added sugars, the white flour, and the white rice, and the white bread. And not to be too much of a reductionist, we don't believe in reductionism in nutrition and the concept of superfood. There is no such thing. But there are certain foods that stand out as far as their health benefits are concerned. And these are green leafy vegetables, blueberries or berries in general, beans, which are incredible sources of fiber and plant proteins, nuts and seeds, which are amazing sources of good fats, poly and monounsaturated fats. Some research which kind of shows, these are some salient research findings that help us understand the concept. This study that was published in 2003 by Dr. Martha Morris on the Chicago Health and Aging Study, 2,500 individuals were followed for multiple years, and those of them who had higher amounts of saturated fats and trans fatty acids in their diet over a 6-year period had a higher risk of developing Alzheimer's disease compared to those who derived their fats from plants, who had a lower risk. The Adventist Health Study in Loma Linda, where we work, back in 1993, a study showed that people, and especially the Seventh-day Adventist population, they have vegetarians, non-vegetarians, and people on a plant-based diet. So it's really a good study to look at the effect of diet long-term. And they found that in a group of over 3,000 individuals, those who consumed meat, which included poultry and fish, had twice the risk of developing dementia compared to those who are vegetarians and plant-based. The Kaiser Permanente Northern California study, which included close to 10,000 individuals, they found that when they had high cholesterol during their midlife, they had a 57% higher risk of developing Alzheimer's disease compared to those who did not, who had controlled their cholesterol. And even borderline high cholesterol increased the risk of Alzheimer's by 23%. In the Women's Health Study, 6,000 women followed for 4 years. Higher saturated fat intake was associated with a faster decline in their cognition by 70% compared to women who had the lowest saturated fat intake. And when they did neuropsychological tests on these women, the women who had the lowest saturated fat intake had the brain function of women 6 years younger. So they actually functioned better.
As well as imaging.
As well as imaging as well. So they looked better and they functioned better. This study that was conducted by some of my mentors in Columbia University found that in a Hispanic-dominated community in New York, the Northern Manhattan study, those who consumed a plant-based diet had a lower risk of cognitive decline over a span of 6 years compared to those who stuck to the standard American diet or the SAD diet. The Mayan diet has been coming up over and over again. So it's a diet that is essentially a Mediterranean diet with some modifications to optimize it. So there's even further reduction of saturated fats and more consumption of plant-based foods. And it was this study was conducted by Martha Morris from Rush University, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. 1,000 patients, ages 58 to 98, followed for a long time. Those of them who adhered to the Mayan diet strictly, they had a 53% reduction in Alzheimer's disease. 53%. And even moderate adherence led to a 35% reduction in Alzheimer's. And those who consumed the diet or adhered to the Mayan diet had cognitive functioning equivalent to a person who was 7.5 years younger. So we see the consistency of the diet that, the Mediterranean Mayan diet, which is essentially a plant-based diet, and I'll show you in a few minutes, is quite beneficial. And there's no medication that has shown us these kind of numbers. As far as vitamins are concerned, we had to bring this up because everybody wants a quick fix, unfortunately. And as far as vitamins are concerned, it's the anti-inflammatory effects of B vitamins that actually helps quite a bit. Elevated homocysteine, which happens as a result of low B vitamins, is a risk for brain atrophy or shrinkage, cognitive impairment, and dementia. And in this study, what they did was they were given high doses of B vitamins if they had high homocysteine, and that led to reduction in brain atrophy, halting of cognitive impairment, and some reversal in some people as well. So which means that, of course, it's very important for us to keep an eye on our B vitamins, and if we eat a wholesome diet, then we shouldn't have any problems. Now, I wanted to highlight a few things about the Mediterranean diet because that's the subject of my research with the California teacher study. And people think that Mediterranean diet is essentially pasta, wine, and cheese, and maybe some music in the background. But I was curious as to what that essentially meant, especially for people who live in a non-Mediterranean environment. So the California teacher study population that I work with consists of more than 133,000 women followed since 1995. We have several kinds of data points on them: questionnaires, lifestyle measures, and hospitalization data as well. And in one particular analysis, we wanted to find out what was the relationship between diet and stroke. And so we found that the Mediterranean diet construct essentially was this: you are given a high score if you consume vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts and seeds, legumes, and mono and polyunsaturated fats. And fish was essentially a source of omega-3 fatty acids, which are important for the brain. And low score was given for sources of saturated fats in meat, poultry, and dairy, and other sources, which essentially come from processed diets.
And the fish, it doesn't mean that you have to consume the fish. It's just any source of omega-3.
Right. It's the omega-3 measures that were included. And what we found that people who adhered to the Mediterranean diet, which is essentially a plant predominant diet, they had a reduced risk of stroke and also both ischemic and hemorrhagic stroke, which is incredible. So we know that food is incredibly important, and I think that's the subject of our conversation today. And we have data coming to us over and over again, such as this one, the State of U.S. Health, looking at long-term studies. And food and dietary risks are at the top. They are the reason for most of the chronic disease of aging, and especially when it comes to dementia and vascular diseases of the brain. So most deaths and disabilities, at least in the United States and around the world, are preventable and related to diet. So in a nutshell, and happy to discuss this in the Q&A, the diet that seems to be quite beneficial for the brain is a plant-based diet and an unprocessed plant-based diet, which has been associated with lower inflammation, lower vascular disease, and lower insulin resistance, which is essentially glucose is the primary fuel for brain cells. And so if we eat a plant-based diet, we can reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease. And vitamins and nutrients are best derived from foods and not supplement unless we have a deficiency, and one needs to work with their physicians to make sure that it is checked on a regular basis. And with that, I will move to exercise.
So there are 5 components to our plan: nutrition, exercise, unwind, stress management, restorative sleep, and optimizing mental activity. Today, we're going to focus a lot on nutrition, but exercise is critically important, probably more important for the brain than any other organ. 3 components to exercise. Aerobic exercise, you really have to get tired. Whenever we talk, our patients say, "Oh, Dr. Sherzai, I'm fine. I walk the neighborhood. I do gardening." No. You have to get short of breath at least 5 days a week and slowly work your way towards 25 to 30 minutes, 5 days a week. That actually has been shown to be significantly correlated with both vascular health and abatement of dementia and cognitive resilience. Second thing is, sedentary behavior is going to nullify all the benefits of exercise. But if it's no exercise and you're sedentary, that's worse than smoking several packs. So create a life around your home where you're standing more often, that you're moving more often, or at least not more than 1 to 2 hours in a row where you're sitting in one place. You're getting up, stretching, and moving. That's critical. That's critical for multiple reasons, but more importantly, when you're in a sedentary state, especially as you get older, a lot of vascular phenomena happen that can have profound effect on the brain. Third, which was surprising, was that not the part that anaerobic or weight training is important. We knew that's important because of joint health, because of pain and how it affects sleep and all of that. It helps all of that. But leg strength seems to be very strongly correlated with brain health and brain strength. So we tell people, whether it's you're doing biking or doing the stairs or mini squats or lunges, definitely not weighted weights, because we see the product that at age 60 with back injuries. Yes. But things like that strengthening the leg actually has been shown to be both beneficial because much lower risk of falls as we get older, but also it maintains brain health and brain growth. Stress, it's about good stress and bad stress. Good stress, yes. Focus on good stress. Good stress when you have a purpose, it's clear, it's measurable, and achievable according to a timeline. When you push your brain to do something achievable in a timeline fashion, it actually grows the neuronal connections. Now that's critical. Bad stress is the opposite. You're doing something that's not serving your purpose, not clear direction, not clear timelines, and the kind of chaos that creates through your limbic, hypothalamic, pituitary system and through your autonomic system is profound. So get a better relationship between your good stressors, specifically, I want to learn a musical instrument, I want to take classes, or your bad stressors, specifically. I don't like driving 2 hours a day. I don't like, the cooking session that I have to, all these things.
I like the cooking
No, I mean, well, certain things you don't like.
Yeah,
but
true.
Specific and measurable way that you can then operationalize it and reduce it.
I love the fact that we can actually go into the specifics
and check it off. Exactly. And that's critical, because that relationship between the how that emotion over time creates a long, prolonged tail of inflammation and immune deficiency and everything else has been well studied now. So get a better relationship between good and bad stress. Sleep. Sleep is critical. There's a reason you're knocked out and paralyzed for 8 hours.
We say it's the most important time of the day, even though you're unconscious. But 2 things happen when we sleep. The first thing that happens is our brain consolidates its memory. So all of the information that we accumulate during the day, it's essentially superficial. But during the deeper stages of sleep, these are converted into long-term memory. And that happens only when we hit the deeper, crucial stages of sleep, which is called slow wave sleep. And if we keep waking up, or if we are not comfortable in our bed, or if we've eaten too much, it doesn't allow us to go through those stages, and our memories are not consolidated appropriately. So it's critical for us to maintain a good sleep hygiene. The second thing that happens is our brain cleanses itself.
Mhm.
We have a very specific mechanism dedicated in the brain called the glymphatic system that gets activated when we go through the deep stages of sleep, and it cleanses the brain. You know, the brain is the most active organ in our body, and so the byproducts that are created because of all the molecular mechanisms and the activity that is going on, they cause debris and waste products, and they have to be cleansed. And we now know that this is not a scare tactic, but even one night of bad sleep can increase the amount of beta amyloid protein that has been associated with Alzheimer's disease. So having a good sleep is crucial for prevention of Alzheimer's disease. And certain sleep disorders like sleep apnea or restless leg syndrome, they can disrupt the sleep architecture. And in one study, we found that sleep apnea could increase the risk of Alzheimer's by 70%, untreated sleep apnea.
Mm.
So if somebody has these disorders, they have to be treated. They have to be, first of all, detected and treated right away.
And then lastly, but not least, is optimizing brain activity, which is about the good stress. Pushing your brain is critical throughout life. In fact, as we get older, even more important, because this incredible investment in brain has a function to think, to challenge, to gather information. And when it's not doing that, the brain actually sees no benefit in maintaining all that. It actually starts shrinking and collapsing. So continue throughout life challenging yourself, pushing your brain. Multiple studies, two of them that I'm going to highlight in short fashion is the London taxi driver study, which showed that those people who actually went through that study period, this is prior to GPS,
right? The knowledge where they memorized.
Yeah, and they actually grew their brain and did much better in cognitive function after that period, as compared to bus drivers, which are following the same path.
And if I may add, this can happen at any age. And that's the crucial thing, because people think that after a specific age, the brain doesn't grow and reconnect itself. No, we continuously can improve our brain resilience and cognitive reserve.
And the none study showed that despite pathology in our brain, if you're thinking, if you're being challenged mentally and cognitively, and continually learning throughout life, that despite pathology, be it vascular or degenerative, you can avoid Alzheimer's. And this study was amazing study.
Really
I want you to look at it for yourself. It was actually a groundbreaking insight into the connectivity of the brain and how it can protect you against pathology. And at the core of optimizing brain activity, we did a meta-analysis, which you can find on PubMed, which showed complexity, purpose, and challenge. Purpose means the activities that you should take on, especially as you get older, but at any age, should serve your purpose. Now, that purpose doesn't have to be something grandiose like I'm going to save the rainforest. Great if you do, but it could be something as simple as learning musical instrument, taking classes, learning to dance, leading a group, learning new language, having a group that you're actually interacting with, but it should be complex, which means real life stuff. I mean, I like Sudoku and crossword puzzles, but they don't take the place of real life activities that are complex and multi-domain, and they should be challenging, meaning that if it's something challenging at the brain at the beginning and then it's repetitive thereafter, it's not pushing the brain. It should be pushing you. It should be making you think. It should be making you memorize. It should be making you focus. And if it does that an hour to 2 hours a day, you continue to make connections in the order of billions of connections at any age in life. I mean, that's remarkable. And that's where Optimize is. Now, if you add all of that, nutrition, exercise, stress management, sleep hygiene, or restorative sleep, and optimizing mental activity, not only are you going to avoid Alzheimer's, but most importantly, you're going to maintain more of yourself as you get older. More importantly, you're going to improve more of yourself as you get older. That's the point of what we're doing. That's the point of our book. That's the point of the course that comes with it, if you pre-order. So,
and we're conducting the largest study.
I jumped ahead of myself.
No, it's okay. We're conducting the largest study, the Healthy Minds Initiative, here in beach cities of Southern California, where we're focusing on the impact of personalized behavior change and lifestyle on cognitive health. And it's a 3-year study where we're recruiting individuals in a particular community following them, intervening with lifestyle intervention, and we're doing cognitive tests, MRIs, and blood biomarkers through their physicians before and after in each year to look at the impact of the study moving forward. This is our wonderful team. Pre-COVID, of course, we couldn't be standing this close during this time. And yeah, this is our book, and it was published in the US and in the UK. And
this is the new book.
As Ruhini kindly mentioned, this is the new book, The 30-Day Alzheimer's Solution. We were a little uncomfortable with the word 30-day. It by no stretch of imagination means that in 30 days you can make a major change in your brain health. But I think it's a message that in 30 days you can definitely move towards a healthier habit for brain health. And I think it's available in UK in May.
Yeah, but for those who pre-order, we actually have a course, a 1-month course that on a daily basis, yes, we, us plus other nutritionists, plus the sleep doctor from Harvard and stress doctors from Oxford and others, we help you go through this process. And the 30 days, you learn the habits, the behavior and habits of how to inculcate this into your life, as opposed to a diet program or this or that. So I would love to have you guys there. And then the other thing is everything we do goes to our Healthy Minds Initiative, which is a non-for-profit, which is there to promulgate and spread the message. So meet us there.
Well, we kind of sprinted through that because we wanted to have enough time so we can have a Q&A. But thank you for your focus and attention, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
That was absolutely incredible. We have so many questions already. And thank you for allowing so much time for the Q&A, because people really do have so many questions about this topic, and hopefully we can get through some of them. So before we dive into them, I would just love to know how both of you discovered plant-based nutrition, or how you came across some of the concepts that you've explored in the presentation, and what brought you to that.
Yeah. It's been an 18-year journey. Is it 18 years now?
I believe so.
Yeah. So yes. At the time, I was at National Institute of Health, NIH, Building 10, experimental therapeutics branch. It doesn't get any more wonky in the world than that. Incredible research, putting BDNF and GDNF into the human brains with Parkinson's and other. And I was invited because I had some public health background to go to Afghanistan with HHS and World Bank to help. Eventually, the president asked me to become the deputy minister of health and lead the healthcare system. I was 30 something years old then. And Ayesha had come back with Doctors Without Borders.
I was a medical student back then. Yeah. Yes.
And we met in a party, and we hit it off. We started talking about our grandparents who had suffered from dementia, brilliant people. And then within a few years, within a year or so, right, we got married. And then within a year after that, we came back. We started our journey initially at UCSD, which was the #1 neuroscience program in the world. And then we did something crazy again. We decided to go to Loma Linda, from UCSD and NIH to Loma Linda. Ayesha finished her dual fellowship in preventive medicine and neurology, and I was the director of brain initiative there. And as we studied and studied and studied, we saw that no matter what and I was a meat eater. We're talking about 7 times a day meat eater. Basically almost a carnivore. And we saw that the science was unavoidable. It was, if you looked at Mediterranean, and the only reason that Mediterranean is getting so much play is because it's not threatening to people, and it's sexy, and it's like people think about gondolas and wine, and I don't know why gondolas, but wine and stuff. But it's actually the plant-based component, 100%. It's the plant-based component that actually does the benefit. In fact, that's how they score it. It's not like we are saying that. That's how they score it. They give you high scores. You're more Mediterranean if you're 100% plant-based.
Right.
That's how, same thing with Mind Diet. Mind Diet showed that 53% reduction in risk of dementia, 53%. And the couple of things in there that are weird is like chicken. Well, even the scientists say the chicken it's in spite of the chicken that they did so well. So what if you do whole food plant-based? It's going to be much better. So repeatedly, of course, Adventist Health Study, we did research there, which showed cognitive decline was significantly reduced with those who are plant-based. And study after study after study, it's always plant-based. So that's how we came to it. And there's no, we do research. I was director of research education for all the residents in Loma Linda. I was the director of research in neurology. There is no question, even in Columbia University, that it's plant-based first, plant-based second, plant-based third.
Yeah.
I love that answer. So one of the other top voted questions in the Q&A box is, do you have any advice for shift workers? Many health workers have to work night shifts and day shifts, which makes eating well and sleeping well really difficult. And we know it's poor for metabolic health anyway. And I know this is relevant to so many people listening. We have so many healthcare professionals who choose.
Right. Right. That is a challenge, isn't it? And there's no so there's no good answer for it. I mean, obviously, for shift workers, I think they should focus on at least having periods where their circadian rhythm is back on track, which means, say for example, if they have a 2-week shift where they're doing night shifts, I think it's important to have these intervals of quote unquote normalcy where they're up during the day and sleeping at the night. That would be very important. And then for those, I know that there will be a lot of new mothers who will, have to stay up with their children at night, or some circumstance in their life that wouldn't really allow them to sleep at night. Things can't really be perfect, and focusing on things that we do have control over, such as exercise and nutrition and things of that nature, is important in those circumstances. But yes, shift workers should try to see if they can have periods of normal circadian rhythm as much as possible.
Okay, that's great. So a couple of questions that I've seen have a kind of common thread, and it's around whether there's such a thing as too late. Is switching to a plant-based diet and living healthier later in life? One lady has asked if that's helpful in her 50s. Another has said in her 70s. Is that enough to reverse damage done if there's a genetic Alzheimer's? And these both the ladies who've asked have family members who have Alzheimer's. So they want to ask specifically, is it too late?
I see.
60s or 70s?
So yeah. So once a person has fulminant Alzheimer's, it's tough from 2 reasons. One is, I know that even in our plant-based world, some doctors are now claiming that they can reverse Alzheimer's, and we think it's bewilderingly unethical. We were told that if we had even hinted at that in our book, we would have sold 2 extra million books. I said, no amount of sales mean anything if we're playing with people's hopes. That's a false hope. Anybody who knows neuroscience and how the brain works and how much damage is done once somebody has you're talking about full Alzheimer's, is false. There's some study that you can potentially slow it down, but then the other part of it is at that point where a person has lived a particular type of life, and then for you to, at the time of anxiety, which actually is ubiquitous in Alzheimer's patients, especially, for you to completely wholesale from outside change their life, is that even ethical? So that's a personal thing. But prior to Alzheimer's, at MCI stage, mild cognitive impairment stage, even vascular, at that stage, absolutely. I mean, a huge number of population, we're talking about if 10% of population has dementia at 65, there's a much bigger population that have MCI, mild cognitive impairment. All of those can be significantly affected with a whole food plant-based exercise diet. So if you think you're having some memory issues, there's never too late. In fact, I think that if you get older, that's when it has the most benefit, because when you're older, any damage is exponential. Any benefit is exponential. Your system has been under attack for decades. Now you're going to have that fatty, saturated, fat-laden, trans fat-laden, bad diet. That meal becomes more of a poison to you than that resilient brain in the 20s. So you're eliminating a bad, and that has profound positive effect on you. And then you're adding the positive anti-inflammatory, antioxidant benefits and glucose dysregulation benefits of plant-based diet, which has another exponential power. So short of fulminant dementia, it is actually even more beneficial. At any age, start that. It's going to have profound effect. And then the third thing, your brain has an incredible forgiving capacity. We have 80 billion neurons. They can make a couple of connections each, or as much as 30,000 connections each at any age. If you give it the right environment, right nutrients, it will make those connections, which will give you resilience.
That's such a hopeful answer. Thank you. So one of the questions is actually from my father, and it was with regards to coffee. I think he tuned into one of your events last week, and he said 3 to 5, you mentioned that 3 to 5 cups are thought of as being good for brain health. However, this may affect sleep, or if for people who suffer from anxiety, as well as it could affect bone health adversely, particularly for women, I think. Does decaf work as well? And generally, would love to know your thoughts on coffee in a bit more detail.
Right. So we're learning more and more about coffee. From large studies, it's quite obvious that coffee and the compounds that come with it, specifically the anti-inflammatory components of coffee, seem to be beneficial for brain health. And, maybe a cup or two of coffee a day, minus the dairy and the sugar, hopefully, is going to be beneficial. And there have been multiple studies as far as its relationship with Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease, and they seem to be salutary. However, as you mentioned, caffeine can be a major issue because as we grow older, our brain gets very sensitized to caffeine, and it can severely affect our sleep cycles. And there are some other situations. For example, if individuals have high blood pressure or anxiety or some cardiac arrhythmias, it's incredibly important for them to take this recommendation in the context of their general health. Or for example, people who have osteoporosis, they have to make sure that they don't consume too much. So yes, the answer is decaffeinated coffee does contain the same anti-inflammatory. We don't have large data to suggest that decaf is as good as caffeinated, and we say it should be discussed with one's physician, and the recommendation should be taken in the context of their general health.
That answer is perfect, and I agree with it. The couple of things that we always talk about is complexity. We have to, as a community, as a society, we have to get used to the complexity of healthcare, as well as the complexity in everything, politics and everything, but especially healthcare. It's never binary. When something is good, even the best thing can be harmful in the wrong context. So all of that should be taken into consideration. Caffeine, the data, and another thing is, the data in nutrition is not binary. In fact, the data even in physics is not binary. Just look into quantum physics or even Newtonian physics. It's a trend. And the trends in coffee so far show benefit, but there are situations where you actually should abstain. And that's true not just for coffee, but for other elements as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I can see lots of questions that people have where certainly they are kind of complex issues. One that is one that you've addressed in your book and in lots of your other events and podcasts is about fish and omega-3 supplementation. Would love for you to explore that in a bit more detail, specifically your thoughts on algae-derived omega-3 supplements and dosage depending on age group, and what we know, what we are still waiting for more information on as well.
Absolutely.
So for transparency's sake, we were on Rupi's podcast just now recently. And we said we're vegans for animals, for environment, for health. We're so pleased that the 3 Venn diagrams superimposed. But we're also science-based. The science on fish is such that so far data shows that fish, especially fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, seem to be, there's a positive correlation for brain health, period. But what we see is that correlation has nothing to do with fish, has to do with omega-3. So if you take your omega-3 by food, and if you take it, if need be, with supplement, you should be fine. So that's the data. And even if that wasn't the case, we think that, as Dr. Katz says, if there's no healthy planet, there's no healthy humans. What we're doing to the oceans is enough of a reason. But nonetheless, the data shows that you can supplement if you need it. We've done two huge reviews, systematic reviews that we just submitted.
They're being published hopefully soon.
Yeah, one is omega-3 and the developing brain, and omega-3 and the aging brain. And looking at pre-birth, birth, and all the way to teenage and adolescence years, it appears that the trend data, there's no absolute data. So there's not, because those data need incredible studies, but the trend data shows that for those developing brains, there might be greater emphasis on omega-3 because the only fat that the brain needs is omega-3s, not saturated fat. Not, some people say if brain is made of fat, therefore they need. No, we don't. We do fine. The rest of the brain is a. Go ahead.
I know, and that's a very, very important point, because I think the statement that the brain is made out of fat and you should eat fat because it needs it is such a false statement. Yes, the brain is made out of fat, but the fat in the brain, like Dean said, is structural fat. It's a part of the cell membrane. It's a part of the myelins that cover the axons and the structure of the brain itself. I mean, imagine if we had storage fat in the brain. If we went starving, the brain would essentially eat itself. That doesn't happen. So the only kind of fat that is needed by the brain is omega-3 fatty acids, and that's it. We have enough cholesterol. We don't need saturated fats.
And absolutely. And there are times in life where you might need to be further away or actually take supplements. Developing brain, aging brain, pregnancy, and lactation. And that's your choice to see if you need it as in food form. And if you're just going to go by food, and if you're plant-based, it's not just about chia and flaxseed. We all know about that. It's about also reducing the omega-6 fats, because the pathway of conversion is affected in there, and reducing the challenge on the liver through alcohol and others, so that you give the liver the optimal capacity to convert ALA to EPA to DHA. But so we say that we actually take omega-3s, algae-based.
Yeah.
We don't eat fish because we worried about, the data might show a certain way, but we worry about fish. And also we worry the fact that the toxins that are not checked in fish, thousands of chemicals added. So omega-3 is something to be up on your radar. Our research shows that it should be, because your brain definitely needs a lot of it at certain times in life.
And we don't really have any data suggesting that an optimized, well-planned, whole food, plant-based diet is any worse than a diet that has fish. So if your diet is planned and if you're cognizant of your micronutrients, I think we should all be fine.
Love that answer. And that brings me very nicely onto another very big topic, which is oil. And I love the nuanced way that you've approached that in the new book, but would love if you could quickly just share your thoughts on oils, which are obviously a very varied category in themselves.
It is, yes, absolutely. We're very fortunate that we have, our favorite statement is to the best of our knowledge today. So we go by science and by the latest data on fat. All fats are not bad. There are specific types of fat that are unhealthy. Saturated fats and trans fatty acids are very unhealthy, and we've known this for a long, long time. It causes damage to the neurons, and it causes damage to the millions and millions of branches of the arteries that are in our brain. Our brain is the most vascular organ in our body, and we have miles and miles of these tremendously susceptible arteries that provide oxygen and nutrition to the parts of the brain that are responsible for function. So if we consume saturated and trans fatty acids, they cause damage. So whether it's butter, and I might say some people might not like it, even coconut oil, which is a very high source of saturated fats, can cause damage to those brains. To the brain arteries.
Did you hear the quivering fear about the coconut oil?
I've lost
population?
Friends over coconut oil. Oh my God, I'm really sorry.
There are actually some questions about coconut oil in there.
And I love coconut milk. We lived all over the world, and having curries and coconut milk is wonderful. But we know that it's a very high fatty food, and so limiting it at least is incredibly important. And as far as oil, cooking oil is concerned, and let's just kind of go to extra virgin olive oil. There was a time when oil was vilified, that it causes damage to the arteries, that it causes inflammation to the endothelium, but it causes vasoconstriction. But that data is essentially very, very small, and it really hasn't been validated in multiple lines of research. And the tremendous amount of data is actually telling us that if we switched from saturated fats to mono and polyunsaturated fats, say for example, going from butter and margarine to extra virgin olive oil in limited amount, it actually is salutary, that it can help us live longer. And it's at the center of the Mediterranean diet, and we've seen that people who include extra virgin olive oil in their foods actually do well. However, again, just like what I said about fish, a healthy diet can be with or without extra virgin olive oil. And so, if people choose to include a little bit of extra virgin olive oil in their diet, I don't think that's actually going to harm them. And we come from a public health perspective. So when we approach people, and a majority of people in the communities that we work with have very unhealthy dietary patterns. And so moving them to a healthier diet, one that is delicious, that makes them eat more vegetables, if it requires a little bit of extra virgin olive oil to make it delicious, we're okay with that. And that's based on science. And of course, we're going to change our mind if there's more research done and if it shows us that it's beneficial. But so far, we have no data that shows that extra virgin olive oil is unhealthy.
Love that. I'm just going to quickly run a poll to get everyone's feedback on the talk. So while I do that, I know there's still so many questions, but one that I can see in the comments and I would love to ask is, it's hard to sum up quickly, but your thoughts on—
And I tell you, if you give us a low score, we know your coconut oil consortium.
No,
I'm joking.
We're happy with everything you say.
And the comments have been wonderful, and the questions too. And I would say to everyone there's so many questions that I couldn't possibly, I'm struggling to read them all because we've had about 60 questions in this short period. But lots of the questions that are coming up, I know because I had the sneak peek of your book that you answered those in that book. So do have a look at that for everyone who's got the sort of the questions around genetics and red wine, that's all covered there. But one thing that would be great to hear your thoughts on are low carbohydrate diets, which continue to be a trend both in the USA and in the UK, particularly for diabetes and so on. And we have a lot of information about that on the Plant-Based Health Professionals UK website, but I'd love to know from a brain health stance what your views are.
So we have 4 things that we can build our energy and our life around. Nucleic acids, which is DNA and RNA, proteins, fats, and carbs. We can't do anything with no energy or structural with DNA, and RNA, so nucleic acids. So that leaves proteins, carbs, and fats. Fats, as much as there's all this noise coming up because it's actually confirmation bias, you can't build life around just fat or predominantly fat. And there's plenty of data, as Ayesha showed, saturated fat and trans fats and its association with stroke, with dementia is systematically and repeatedly been shown. So that leaves proteins and carbs. So if not carbs, then can you build a life around protein or predominantly protein? No, there's no data that, so whenever we do analysis, be it philosophical, psychological, nutritional, in any way, is feasibility and efficacy. I mean, is it doable and is it right? Validity and efficacy. Is this true? The data shows that low carb diets, short term or long term, there isn't enough data to show benefit. In fact, the very little data that comes from ketogenic diet and others, nothing over 3 months period.
Right.
And 3-month period data mean nothing. Mm-hmm. And I was in charge of many studies, that means nothing. And whenever you see people doing 6-month or 3-month data, and they're trying to push that as something more meaningful, it's a ploy. I'm sorry, those seem like rough, terms, but it's real. If it's 6 months, it's a ploy. Nothing that shows that anything over 6 months in a low carb diet. So efficacy, there's no evidence. And validity, there's no evidence. So if all that's left is carbs, then carbs. But what kind of carbs? Complex carbs bound to fiber, period. You can't live on DNA. You can't live on protein alone. You can't live on, fats. The only fat data came to us, fat dominant data came to us from ketogenic diet studies on our patients, not ours, neurologists, pediatric seizure patients. that were intractable to seizures. So they had to shock the system with a ketogenic diet that's not sustainable in populations, find me one, and then they lowered the seizure threshold a little bit. So we want to translate public health lifestyle from a population that was intractable seizures as like saying that we want to adopt a diet from chemotherapy treatment of cancer patients. It doesn't make sense. A challenge state, a disease state, is a different state than a vitality state.
Exactly, exactly. And those are the studies that are coming to us. They are coming from, you know, from studies that have been conducted in individuals who are suffering from profound diseases and they're in a shock state. So that's what people need to understand, that if you're healthy and if you don't have any symptoms, there really is no need. Forget about the outcomes. Just eating a complex carbohydrate included diet is incredibly helpful.
And even at the molecular side, if you take fat, so you've left with protein and fat. Diets that have even tried short-term inflammation, oxidation, all of that. Yeah, sometimes glucose regulation is controlled, but long-term inflammation and oxidation is not controlled. That's harmful. Whereas a whole food plant-based diet absolutely across the board affects all of these things positively. So
thank you so much. I just want to read out a few of the comments because they are so lovely and a very practical and hope-filled talk. Thank you for giving us so much hope. This has been fascinating and enlightening. Lots of praise for your bean soup recipe, Dr. Ayesha. And also some people have said that they love your cooking videos with your daughter. I will have to see. I love all the focus on family and on community in your book is just so wonderful. So I know that there were lots of questions that we didn't get to everyone, but I can't recommend following Dr. Dean and Dr. Ayesha on social media enough. Their website is sherzaimd.com, and they have some brilliant podcasts and other resources I will definitely link to. But how could everyone keep up to date with what you're doing? There's so many moving parts and you're doing so many different things. What's the best way for us in the UK to, and abroad, of course, we have lots of international members, to keep up with your work?
Thank you so much, Rohini. Thank you so much for everyone with their kind comments. It really means the world to us. Everything we do goes to the Healthy Minds Initiative. We're quite passionate about this community effort to this devastating disease because world community, because we've seen the devastation. We work in the clinic and in the hospital, and then we go out into the communities, and all of us can do so much about this condition. You can follow us on social media. We check our own messages and get back to you. We are at Sherzai MD on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Our website is teamsherzai.com. You can contact us anytime. contact@teamsherzai.com is the email. Happy to speak with you. Happy to even start a Healthy Minds Initiative project in the UK, in London, if anybody's interested. We any funds coming towards the HMI actually gets subjected to that project itself.
100%.
So we would be happy to work with anyone who's interested in implementing this in their communities.
And those who pre-order, and this is some even if you don't, it's okay, but join us in our in our 1 month program online, where we on a daily basis will take people through this process and give talks, information, Q&A sessions, and 6 Q&A sessions. We would love to take a whole large population. Already we have several thousand people that have signed up. It's going to start fairly soon. So please be part of this community, and we hope to make a difference.
Thank you so much. Yes, I can see lots of people have already pre-ordered, which is amazing because it will be coming out in May. And for those of you who want to share this talk with others, then recordings are available for PBHP members. I will be sharing the slides and the CPD certificate with everyone. But I just want to thank everyone for joining us on a Thursday evening and giving your time and attending today's session with so much enthusiasm and engagement, and hopefully see you in 2 weeks' time, because we're going to have a great session on food intolerances and allergies, which of course are really key for all the people. There were lots of new faces today who are new to a plant-based diet. Plant-Based Health Professionals UK has hundreds of free resources. We have about 40 free fact sheets on our website covering everything from bloating, to soya, to bone health, to celiac disease. So go and check those out if you're new, and have a look at our website. That's pbhp.uk. And thanks everyone, and good night, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. And thank you again, Dr. Ayesha and Dr. Dean.
It's our pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much for
much.
having us.